I was called a traitor by those who once saw me as a sister. For years, I was among those who believed, those who served, those who gave their lives to the altar. I was the shadow working behind the scenes, always ready to help. The smell of fresh coffee after the services still echoes in my mind, along with the laughter and shared prayers. I was there at every meeting, at every event, but never really seen. I was invisible, but my love for the community was palpable. But everything changed on a sunny Sunday. It was a day like any other, but something in the atmosphere seemed different. When the pastor climbed onto the pulpit, my heart raced. He began to speak about the importance of unity, but I soon found myself at the center of that message. Some people do not deserve to be among us, he said, and each word was a stab. I felt the ground crumble when I heard my name. It was not a defense but an accusation. I was not a problem, I was just me, and that seemed to be an offense. And then I realized, this was not just a fight against me, but a fight against what I represented. I was proof that not everyone in the church is willing to remain silent in the face of hypocrisy. But there is something they didn't know. At that moment, something inside me awakened. The pain turned into a flame. I was the one who silently sustained everything. My love, my faith, my dedication were the roots that kept that community alive. No one knew that I spent sleepless nights praying for each member, for every decision made. But when the truth came to light, I realized that the unity we so fiercely defended was, in fact, a disguise for exclusion. I was not alone. Many others faced the same silent pain, but only I was exposed. Deep down, this taught me that true love is not just what is seen but what is felt, even in the absence of recognition. I learned that silence is the purest form of response. God knows what is in each person's heart. He knows that the pain we carry does not define who we are but transforms us. The pain of rejection taught me compassion. The injustice I faced made me stronger. And now, looking back, I realized that the true victory was not winning the battle imposed on me, but finding peace amidst the storm. If you have experienced something like this, you will understand the weight of this silence. Sometimes, the worst pain is not being cast out. It's realizing that their love was never real. It is worth reflecting on this. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. I came to understand that the pain I felt was not a burden I carried alone. It was a reflection of the struggle of many others who felt invisible, undervalued, but who, like me, still held on to the hope that true faith could prevail. Each day that passed, I realized there was an invisible network of people who, like me, felt lost in a system that prioritized appearance over essence. I remember a conversation with a friend who also lived in the shadows. She said to me, "Sometimes I feel like I'm doing everything right, but still, I'm left aside." Her words resonated in me like an echo. What were we doing wrong? What did it really mean to be part of a faith community? The search for answers became an urgent need. I needed to understand where I had failed. At that time, each service became a torment. What was once a sacred space had now turned into a stage where hypocrisy freely danced. I looked around and saw familiar faces, but what once was comfort was now a constant reminder of what I had lost. The prayers that once sounded like promises now became empty words, echoing into a void I could not ignore. One day, after a service, an elderly lady approached me. With a tender look, she whispered, "You are stronger than you think. I see you." That phrase was a balm for my wounded soul. Even in the midst of pain and betrayal, there were those who noticed the silent struggle. She was not a leader, did not hold a prominent position, but her recognition meant the world to me. The connection I established with her made me reflect on the small victories we often ignore. The strength that comes from recognition, even if subtle, is powerful. I began to realize that, although most saw me as a traitor, there was a small group that cared. And this minority had the power to transform darkness into light. It was then that I decided I should not remain silent. What would happen if I spoke about my experience? What would happen if I shared my pain and struggle? The idea of exposing myself was terrifying, but the pain of remaining silent was unbearable. I needed to find a voice, not just for myself but for everyone who felt like me. So I started writing. The words flowed like a river. On each page, I poured out my pain, my frustration, my hope. The act of writing became a sacred ritual. I wrote about the injustices I had witnessed, about the moments when the people who should have been my brothers and sisters became judges. Writing gave me a new perspective. the ability to transform pain into something that could be shared and, perhaps, understood. Over time, I realized that my story was not just mine, it was part of something bigger. Every time I shared a snippet of what I had written, I received responses from people who identified with my journey. I went through that too. I also felt excluded were messages that arrived, one after another, like a rebirth of shattered hopes. The pain that isolated me now connected me. I was no longer alone. There was a silent movement, a revolution of broken hearts yearning for a place where they could be heard. I started organizing small gatherings, where people could share their stories without fear of judgment. The act of listening and being heard became a remedy for our wounds. And what began as a solitary venting session turned into a support circle, where pain was embraced and hope was reborn. With each meeting, each confession, each tear shared, I felt I was rebuilding not only my faith but also collective faith. The love that seemed to have been lost in the shadows was reemerging. Stronger and more genuine, it was not a disguised love, but a real love rooted in acceptance and empathy. However, the journey was not easy. There were days when the memory of disdain hit me with full force. I still felt the pain of rejection, but now I had learned to channel that pain into something positive. The compassion that had sprouted amidst the storm was becoming the foundation of my new understanding of faith and community, and so I continued. With each step, each word, each tear, I was not only rebuilding my own story but helping others do the same. The journey was not about finding acceptance where I had been rejected, but about creating a new space where everyone could be seen and heard. And deep down, the true transformation began to happen. What was once a space filled with pain was now becoming fertile ground for hope. As each story was shared, the burden we carried seemed to dissipate. The silence, which once was a weight, was now a testament to courage. People began to open up, and with each account, I saw the light shine in their eyes. There was strength in vulnerability, and this united us in a way I had never imagined. The pain that each one carried was unique, but the similarities in our struggles were undeniable. Did you feel like this too? Were you ignored as well? These were questions that echoed among us, creating a web of empathy. Each answer became a bond, each tear a bridge. In the meetings, we began to explore what it really meant to belong to a faith community. We discussed the wounds that hypocrisy had caused and how true unity was not the absence of conflicts, but the acceptance of our imperfections. One of the participants, a young man who had distanced himself from the church, shared how the pain of rejection had led him to question his own faith. "I wonder if God really cares," he said, and those eyes filled with doubt touched all of us. What we were doing there was not just a meeting. It was a sacred space for healing. Through these conversations, I realized that the path to healing was not linear. There were days when the pain was still intense, and the memory of rejection still haunted. One night, returning home after a meeting, I was overcome with a wave of sadness. The image of the faces that had opened up to me brought comfort, but the echo of the pastor's words still resonated in my mind. How could someone who claimed to represent God's love be capable of causing so much hurt? These questions, although difficult, were part of the process. I learned that it was okay to feel anger and sadness, that these feelings were valid and necessary. In time, we decided that we could no longer limit ourselves to informal meetings. It was time to dare more. We began planning a larger event, an open meeting for the community. We wanted everyone to know they were welcome, that their stories mattered. Thus, the idea of the Gathering of Voices was born. It would be a space where anyone could share their experience, without fear of judgment, but with the certainty that they would be heard. The anticipation, it was palpable. But there was also a fear we couldn't ignore. What if the same voices that hurt us came to attack us again? The night of the event arrived. The venue was carefully decorated, and the atmosphere was one of anticipation and hope. I was nervous, but there was a flame inside me that pushed me forward. When I saw people arriving, each one bringing their story, my heart filled with gratitude. I realized that we were all there, not just to speak but to listen. True love was in the act of allowing ourselves to be present, to open up to one another. The stories began to flow, some filled with pain, others with hope. A woman talked about how she left the church because she could no longer bear the hypocrisy she saw around her. Another man shared how the pressure to fit in led him to pretend to be someone he was not. Each account was a piece of a larger puzzle, a piece that fit into the search for a space where we could be genuine. And then, when I thought I had heard it all, a young woman stood up. With a trembling voice, she spoke about how rejection led her to a deep abyss. "I thought about giving up," she said, and the silence that followed was heavy. But instead of getting lost in pain, she told how she found strength in her vulnerability, how the pain led her to seek support and, finally, to forgive herself. Her words were a powerful reminder that even in darkness, light can find a way. At the end of the night, we were all in a circle, holding hands. What started as a space of pain had turned into a sanctuary of love and acceptance. I felt part of something bigger, a movement that challenged established norms and sought a new understanding of what it means to be a faith community. There was a collective strength in us, a determination to create a space where no one would be left behind. In the following days, the energy of the encounter still pulsated within me. I began to realize that my journey was not just about finding my own voice, but about empowering others to find theirs. With each new story, each new connection, I felt that we were helping each other heal the invisible wounds we carried. And so, I began to devote more time to this cause, getting involved in projects that promoted inclusion and acceptance within the community. In the midst of this process, the pain of rejection still followed me like a shadow. There were days when I felt on the edge of an abyss, struggling against the echoes of the words that hurt my heart. But even so, there was a new purpose born from my vulnerability. With each step I took, I realized that solidarity became the light that illuminated my path. The pain had not disappeared, but now it was part of a larger narrative, a collective story that I was helping to build. With each new encounter, people began to open up more. A man who had distanced himself from the church for years due to painful experiences revealed how isolated he felt and how rejection had shaped his view of God. "I couldn't understand how a place that was supposed to be welcoming could be so cold," he said. His words resonated with me, like an echo of everything I had experienced. What once seemed a burden now transformed into a space of acceptance where everyone's pain could be shared and validated. One day, while organizing a new meeting, a young woman arrived with a lost look. She seemed hesitant, but there was a flame of determination in her eyes. "I just want to be heard," she said, and at that moment, I realized that each one of us was there not just to share, but to listen to each other's pain. The act of listening had become a powerful healing tool. Each story told, each tear shed, was a step towards liberation. We were creating a space where authenticity was celebrated, conversations flowed, and experiences intertwined like threads of fabric that, although worn, were strong enough to bind us together. One of the meetings turned into a true celebration of life, where each person brought something that represented their journey. Some people brought letters they had written to themselves, others brought music that deeply touched them. It was a magical moment where vulnerability became strength. As time went on, I realized that I no longer carried the same burden. The pain that once paralyzed me now propelled me to act. The desire to prevent others from going through what I went through became a source of fuel. Thus, we decided to expand our support circle. We began inviting people from outside our community, opening the doors to those who also carried stories of pain and rejection. The idea was clear: to create a safe space where everyone could be seen, heard, and above all, loved. One night, at the end of a meeting, a participant suggested that we create a story wall. The idea was simple but powerful. Each person could write or draw something that represented their journey, their struggles, and their victories. The wall would become a visual expression of our community, a reminder that even in the shadows, there was light. Thus, we began collecting stories, and each piece of paper we received became an essential part of our mosaic of experiences. The wall quickly filled with colors and words. There were drawings of hearts, phrases of hope, and accounts of overcoming challenges. Each story was a testament that the pain was not in vain, but a path that led to healing. The wall became a space for reflection, where people could stop, read, and connect with the experiences of others. It was a form of welcoming that transcended words spoken out loud. Over time, the idea of the mural spread. We began receiving invitations to share our stories in other spaces, in other communities facing similar challenges. With each new opportunity, I felt my heart expand. The pain that once isolated me was now connecting me to others, and together we were creating a movement of transformation. One day, I was invited to speak at a conference about the importance of inclusion in religious communities. Nervousness overtook me, but when I looked at the audience, I felt that I was there to represent all those who had no voice. I shared my story, the struggles I faced, and the beauty that emerged from acceptance and vulnerability. At the end of my speech, a respectful silence filled the room, followed by applause that echoed as a recognition of what had been shared from that moment. I realized that my journey was not just about me, but about all of us. The love that had been lost in a system prioritizing appearances over essence was being rescued, one step at a time. People began to stand up, share their stories, and what was once a space of pain was becoming a sanctuary of hope and acceptance. However, the journey was far from perfect. There were still days when the pain of rejection visited me, as a reminder of the path I had walked. One day, looking at the mural, I realized that it was not just a space for celebration, but also a testimony of the scars we carried. It was a reminder that healing is not linear, and that each of us was still in a process. The mural reflected our journey, with its joys and sorrows intertwined. The stories contained there were like visible scars that, although they could hurt, also spoke of resilience and the ability to rise again. One day, while revisiting the mural, a young woman approached me. She had tears in her eyes and was holding a yellow piece of paper. "I wrote my story here," she said, her voice trembling. But I couldn't let go of the fear that my story wouldn't be accepted. The pain in her voice was palpable, and I encouraged her to share. "This space is yours, and your story matters. No matter what, you deserve to be heard." She hesitated, but in the end, took a deep breath and began to speak. Her story was about an internal struggle, about how rejection made her question her own identity and faith. Every word she released was a silent cry of liberation. At the end of her narrative, a respectful silence filled the space, and then, gentle applause began to emerge. In that moment, vulnerability transformed into strength, and she smiled, for the first time without fear. These experiences began to show us that our goal was not only to create a support space, but also to educate and raise awareness about the realities many face within faith communities. We started organizing workshops on empathy and acceptance, inviting people from different backgrounds to share their stories and perspectives. The diversity of experiences brought a wealth of learning that united us even more. During one of these gatherings, a speaker talked about the importance of active listening. He emphasized that often, people are not just looking for a solution, but for a space where they can be seen and recognized. His words resonated deeply with me. I realized that true transformation wasn't in changing others' hearts, but in creating an environment where love and acceptance could thrive. Over time, I realized that the group was becoming a true family. People who once felt isolated and invisible were now supporting each other. We began to celebrate each other's small triumphs, such as a new job, a personal achievement, or even a courageous step towards emotional healing. These celebrations were moments of pure joy, where the pain dissipated, even if temporarily, and love filled the space. However, not everything was easy. There were moments when the voices of the past echoed in my mind. I remembered the pastor's words, the betrayal I had felt, the disdain. Sometimes, the pain manifested as a shadow that followed me, and I struggled not to let it paralyze me. But now, instead of isolating myself, I shared these feelings with the group. I believe that this honesty was the key to healing. By exposing my vulnerabilities, I allowed others to do the same. One day, while organizing a new meeting, one of the participants brought forth the idea of creating a community art project. The proposal was simple. Everyone could express their experiences through drawings, paintings, or collages. The idea quickly spread, and everyone became excited about the possibility of using art as a form of expression. In the following months, the art project transformed into a monthly event. People started gathering to create, share, and celebrate. It was a space where emotions could flow freely, where pain and joy were welcomed. The wall that once separated us was disintegrating, and art became a bridge that united us. One night, as I observed the creations on the mural, I realized that each stroke, each color, each word had captured a piece of our essence, that art was not just a reflection of our struggles, but also a celebration of our victories. The mural became a visual representation of our collective journey, a testament that even in the shadows, there was light. The meetings became a reference point in the community, not just for us, but for others who also felt lost. We began to receive visitors who wanted to learn about what we were doing. People who had heard about our story mural and wanted to connect every time someone joined us. We felt like we were expanding our circle of love and acceptance. Through these interactions, I realized that the transformation was not just personal but social. What once was a stifling space of pain was now becoming a beacon of hope. We started to be recognized not just for our struggle, but for the light we were emanating. People began to talk about us on social media, and what was once a small support group was becoming a larger movement. However, even with the growth of our movement, the shadow of rejection still lingered. It was hard to ignore the echoes of the past, especially when critical voices emerged questioning the authenticity of our struggle. In one of those moments, a person who had been part of our community came up to me with a look of disdain. "Do you really think you can change anything? People will never accept those who don't fit the mold." Their words cut like knives, and for a moment, I doubted everything we had built. But, looking back, I realized that the strength we had cultivated was not something that could be easily erased. The stories we shared, the tears we shed, and the love we created together formed a tapestry that was stronger than any criticism. I knew the struggle was not just mine, it was all of ours, and so, instead of letting myself be discouraged, I decided to use that negative experience as fuel. What could be a defeat became an opportunity to reaffirm our purpose. I decided it was time to take a step forward. We started planning a series of community events, where we would not only share our stories but also invite experts and leaders from various fields to discuss topics such as inclusion, acceptance, and the role of faith in difficult times. The goal was to create an open dialogue, where all voices, regardless of their experiences, could be heard. Each meeting became an opportunity for learning and growth, a space where vulnerability was not seen as weakness, but as a source of strength. Over time, what began as a support circle transformed into a platform for awareness. The community started to mobilize, and people began to bring their experiences to the table. A young artist, who had been marginalized because of his sexual orientation, brought his art and his story to share. His words and creations were a powerful testament to what it means to be rejected, but also to the beauty that can arise from pain. His courage inspired others to open up, and the room filled with a palpable energy, a mix of empathy and solidarity. The walls of our community began to expand. The idea that everyone was welcome, regardless of their stories, started to take root. People who had once felt invisible now became the protagonists of their own narratives. A man who had distanced himself from the church for years due to judgment and hypocrisy decided to share his experience at an event. He recounted how rejection had shaped his view of God and how, after years of pain, he had found a new understanding of divine love. His story deeply touched all of us, and I realized we were creating a space where true transformation was happening. The gatherings became a refuge, a place where authenticity was celebrated. As people opened up, the connection between us deepened. The stories that were once whispered in silence were now proclaimed out loud, echoing the freedom each of us longed for. One of the participants, a woman who had faced the loss of a child, shared how pain had distanced her from faith, but upon finding a safe space, she began to reassess her relationship with God. "I realized that pain and faith can coexist," she said, and her words resonated in our hearts. But the journey was not without challenges. There were days when the struggle seemed unbearable, and the voices of the past still echoed in our minds. One night, after a particularly emotional gathering, a participant approached me with tears in his eyes. "I can't understand why people are so cruel," he said, his voice trembling. I listened to him, knowing that his words represented the pain of many. "It's hard to understand," I replied. "But what we can do is find strength in each other." And there, in that moment, we knew that pain could be a catalyst for change. We then decided that it was important not only to create a welcoming space but also to educate the community about empathy and understanding. We started organizing workshops and lectures, inviting experts to speak about the importance of listening to and accepting others' experiences. Each event became an opportunity to broaden awareness, and empathy began to spread like a wave. People who were once indifferent started to get involved, and the circle of love and acceptance grew. With each new gathering, the energy was palpable. The voices that were once silenced now rose in unison, forming a chorus of hope. A young woman brought a poem she had written about her own struggle with the acceptance. As he recited his words, the room fell silent, and I realized we were living through a historic moment. What was once a place of pain was transforming into a sanctuary. A place where light could enter with the passage of time. Something began to change within me. The pain that once paralyzed me was now turning into action. With each meeting, each shared story, I realized that I was not just helping others find their voices, but was actually rediscovering my own. Each account, each tear, each smile became a reminder of what it meant to be human, of what it meant to be truly alive. I remember one night when a participant brought a box full of letters he had written over the years. He called them letters to my future self. The idea was that, by writing, he could dialogue with his hopes and fears. When he began to read one of the letters aloud, the room went silent. He spoke about his internal struggle, about how he felt lost and directionless, but also about the small victories that kept him going. His words echoed many of us, and in that moment, I realized that vulnerability was an essential bridge that united us. With each new account, the walls that separated us seemed to dissolve. We began to realize that we all carried scars, marks of battles we fought in silence. A young woman, who had distanced herself from the community due to traumatic experiences, shared how the pain had distanced her from faith. She said she was afraid to return, to be rejected again. But there was also a spark of hope in her eyes. "I just want to find a place where I can be myself," she said. Her words touched all of us. And I could see that even in the midst of pain, there was a genuine quest for belonging. That meeting turned into a watershed moment. What was once a space of despair and loneliness now became a sanctuary of support and love. People began to open up about their experiences of rejection, and gradually, the stories intertwined. The collective pain became a cry of resistance, a call to action. We were no longer just victims. We were survivors, and we were ready to fight together. We decided it was time to expand our mission. We started planning an awareness campaign, where we could share our stories with the general community. The goal was clear: to take our message of acceptance and inclusion beyond the walls of our group. The idea of creating a documentary emerged, where we could capture each of our stories and show the world that pain does not have to be a burden, but can be a source of strength. In the following months, we worked hard to bring the project to life. Filming began, and with each new shoot, the emotional intensity increased. The stories we were telling were not only personal, they were universal. Each of us had something to teach and learn. During one of the recordings, an older woman shared her life experience, how she had faced rejection over the years, but had always found a way back to faith. "Faith is like a bond. It can loosen but never breaks," she said, and her words echoed in our hearts. The beauty of her story became a testament to what was possible when hope prevailed. As the project progressed, we also began to receive support from other organizations dedicated to similar causes. The community began to come together, and the voices that were once silenced now became a chorus vibrant. The campaign gained life on social media, and messages of love and inclusion spread like wildfire. Supportive comments began to appear, and with each new share, the feeling that we were making a difference became more tangible. But despite the growing support, we also faced resistance. Some people in the community still saw our movement as a threat. One day, during a meeting, a man stood up and began to criticize what we were doing. He said that we were trying to change the essence of faith, and that the true community did not accept those who did not follow the rules. His words were sharp, and for a moment, the air grew heavy. But instead of letting ourselves be discouraged, we decided it was time to respond with love. A woman raised her hand and said, "Faith is about love and acceptance, and we all deserve a place at the table." The support she received from the room was palpable, and I realized that even amidst opposition, our group was stronger than ever. Over time, we were able to turn criticism into dialogue. We decided to organize a discussion panel where we could invite people with different perspectives. The idea was to create a safe space for difficult conversations, where everyone could share their opinions without fear of being attacked. The event was a challenge, but also an opportunity for growth. Each voice that rose brought a new layer of understanding, and empathy began to flourish. During one of these panels, a young man who had grown up in a conservative community stood up. He began to share his experience of living in constant fear of being who he really was. "For a long time, the only thing I knew was that I couldn't be myself," he said, his voice trembling. I learned to hide who I am to please others. But deep down, I felt like I was dying inside. The room fell silent, and we could all see the struggle in his eyes. He continued, recounting how the pressure to fit in led him to stray away from the faith he once loved. I wanted to believe, but each passing day, the pain of not being accepted pushed me further away from God. His words resonated with many of us. It was an echo of the pain we shared. And there, in that space, he began to cry. That vulnerability was a gift. He was showing us that pain, when shared, became a bond of connection. A woman, who had been a leader in the community, stood up to speak. "I didn't know you were going through this," she said, with tears in her eyes. "I too carried a weight, thinking I had to be perfect to be accepted. The truth is, perfection doesn't exist, and we need to learn to embrace our imperfections." Upon hearing this, I realized that even those in prominent positions were battling their own demons. It was a powerful reminder that everyone, regardless of their stories, faced internal battles. After that meeting, the group began to gather more frequently. We started to create a space where voices were not just heard but valued. The idea of a collective story mural solidified, and we decided that each of us could contribute a part of our journey. The mural would become a symbol of our struggle and resilience, a visual representation of our commitment to creating an environment where everyone felt seen and heard. The meetings transformed into a celebration of diversity. We began to explore different forms of expression: music, poetry, art. Each of us brought something unique, and in every meeting, the room filled with creativity and love. A young artist brought her guitar and, as she played an original song about acceptance, we all joined in a spontaneous chorus. The music echoed in our hearts, like an anthem of hope. Nevertheless, even amid all this growth, there were still days of uncertainty. The critical voices emerging from outside our community continued to challenge us. In a meeting, an older man, who had been an active member of the church, stood up to express his concerns. "You are straying from the values that were taught to us. We cannot allow inclusivity to become an excuse to ignore the truth." His words cut like a knife, but instead of feeling discouraged, we decided to respond with love and understanding. "We need to remember that true faith is about love and compassion," a woman said, breaking the silence that followed. "We may have different opinions, but that does not prevent us from loving each other. I believe God wants all of us to have a place at the table." That statement served as a reminder that, even in our differences, we could find common ground. From that moment, we decided it was time to create an ongoing space for dialogue. We organized an event called Understanding Cafe, where people could gather to openly discuss their beliefs and experiences. We wanted it to be a safe space where everyone could express their opinions without fear of reprisal, and so, we began building bridges instead of walls. Over time, the Understanding Cafe became a monthly event, attracting people from different backgrounds and experiences. Those who once felt isolated now joined us, bringing their stories and struggles. Each meeting was an opportunity to learn and grow together, and slowly, the dialogue began to break down the barriers that separated us. One night, a woman who had been estranged from the church for years decided to join us. With a nervous look, she shared how the rejection had hurt her deeply. "I have always loved God, but the people who were supposed to be my support, they left me aside. I didn't know if I would believe again." Upon hearing this, many of us felt her pain like an open wound. It was a reminder that rejection was not just personal. It was a reality that many faced. A young woman, who had distanced herself from faith due to similar experiences, raised her hand. "I went through that too. The pain of rejection made me question everything. But upon hearing your story, I realize I'm not alone." In that moment, the room filled with empathy. What once was a story of the room filled with empathy. What once was a story of loneliness now became an echo of hope. The voices that were once whispers of pain were now joining in a chorus of understanding. What I saw there was more than just an exchange of experiences. It was a rebirth of faith in a space that had been wounded. The conversations continued to flow, and the connection between us deepened. With each shared story, understanding grew. A man who had distanced himself from the church due to harsh criticism began to speak. "I was always taught that faith is a straight path, but life is full of curves and detours. I didn't know how to deal with that, and I ended up getting lost." His words resonated with many of us. And there, in that space, I realized that we were all seeking a way back, even if in different ways. During one of these gatherings, an older woman shared her story about how pain had driven her away from the church. I thought I would never come back. The rejection was so intense that it made me lose faith in everything, even in myself. The weight of her words hung in the air, and I could feel the collective pain pulsing among us. But instead of letting ourselves be brought down, we decided it was time to seek the light that still existed within each of us. We began to discuss how we could turn our experiences into learning opportunities. A young woman suggested that we create a mentoring group, where we could support each other on our individual journeys. "We can be lights for each other," she said, and her words ignited a flame of hope in all of us. The idea of sharing not just our struggles, but also our victories, became a new purpose. Thus, the mentoring group was formed. Each one of us committed to being a support for the others, creating a safe space where we could grow and learn together. We decided that our stories were not just about pain, but also about resilience and strength. Each of us had something valuable to offer, and by uniting our experiences, we could create a positive impact on others' lives. At each meeting, we began to share our victories. A woman who had secured a new job after months of searching spoke about how rejection had shaped her but also motivated her to fight for her dreams. "I would never have gotten this far if I hadn't found this group here. I feel valued and supported," she said, and everyone applauded enthusiastically. The energy was contagious, and the smiles were proof that we were on the right path. Over time, the mentoring group started to undertake community activities. We decided it was time to take our message of acceptance and inclusion to a larger audience. So, we organized a welcoming event for the community, where we could share our stories and the importance of listening to and accepting differences. The event was promoted with care, and the anticipation grew as the day approached. Finally, the day of the event arrived. The venue was decorated, and an atmosphere of hope hung in the air. When people started to arrive, my heart filled with gratitude. We saw familiar and unfamiliar faces, all there to listen and be heard. What started as a small support group was now becoming a movement of love and acceptance. During the event, each of us had the opportunity to share our story. A young woman, who had faced difficulties in her family life, spoke about how the pain led her to question her faith. "But it was here with all of you that I found a new path. I believe that pain can be a door to transformation," she said, and everyone applauded. It was a powerful testimony that, even in the shadows, light can find its way. At the end of the event, we formed a circle of unity, where each person could express their hopes and dreams for the future. With hands held together, words of hope began to flow. "May we always be a place of before you go. Do two things now. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive future messages. And share this video with someone who needs to hear this today." To continue, watch the next video. It's already in the cards and also in the description.